Hi everybody, we are back with week 2 of grammar. So last week we looked at sentences and we tried to find the prepositional phrases. Step 2 in being able to break down sentences is being able to find the verbs and the verb phrases and determine whether those verbs are action verbs or linking verbs, okay? I know that right now you can't really see me because I'm focused on the screen, but hopefully this will make sense as we go through. Okay, in this lesson, what we're going to be using is we're going to be using our SAM sheet, okay? So the SAM sheet looks like this, and this shows the steps that we have been going through. Step 1, finding prepositional phrases, which is what we did last week. Now we're on to step 2, finding verbs, verb phrases, and determining whether those verbs are linking verbs or action verbs, okay? When we go through sentences, we're going to be doing every step of the process. They build on each other. So after we talk a little bit about verbs and kind of get our heads wrapped around that, when we break down our sentences, we're going to first find the prepositional phrases and then find the verbs. Okay, so we're using this sheet. We are going to be using some of the boxes on the back to help us along. The two that I highlighted in yellow are the ones that we're going to be looking at as we look at verbs and verb phrases. So keep this in front of you. This sheet right here is attached under the assignment as well. These are the lesson notes that go along with this lesson today. So you can print this out, pull it up, follow through with me as I go along. You might want to pause the video at different steps and go back and forth between the notes and the video in order to make sure that you're understanding, but have this one available to you as well, okay? So the first thing that we're going to be looking at as we go through is the idea of what a verb is, okay? A verb can either be active or linking. If it's active, it's expressing some kind of an action, okay? It's expressing a mental or physical action, such as jumping, running, imagining, but it's something that can be done either mentally or physically. If a verb is linking, it is a word that's just expressing a state of being. So I like to think of linking verbs as literally links, like in a chain, where it's connecting two different things together. It's connecting the beginning of the sentence or the subject with the end of the sentence, the predicate, okay? So again, verbs, most important word in the sentence, they're either active, expressing a mental or physical action, or they're linking two different ideas together. Now I'm going to go a little bit more into linking verbs in just a second. But before I do that, I want to give you a tip on knowing whether or not the word that you found is actually the verb in the sentence, okay? So all verbs, when you're looking for them in the sentence, if you're not sure if it's a verb or not, all verbs can have an ing form. Okay, so if you go back to that example of the word jump, jumping, I just added an ing to the end of it. Jump can become jumping and it still makes sense. Imagine can become imagining and it still makes sense. Okay? The word door, I'm looking at my door right now, I'm in the bedroom. Door cannot become dooring. That doesn't make sense because door is not a verb, it's a noun. So we can't just add an ing to the end of it and have it make sense, okay? So that's one way that you can see if you can find it. On this sheet, these verbs up here at the top are your to be verbs. To be verbs are considered a form of linking verbs. They do not follow the ing rule on all of the words. Instead, all of these to be verbs, if you add an ing, become being. Okay, so in the sentence, she is happy, is my linking verb, but ising doesn't make sense, right? Instead, all of those become being. So that's just a little test to see if it is a verb. If it's not, an ing can be added to the end of it. Let's look a little bit more at linking verbs now, okay? I said just a little bit ago that it's not showing an action, rather those verbs are linking two parts of the sentence together. They're showing a state of being. If you want to figure out if something is an action verb or a linking verb, there's a little bit of a test that we can apply called the substitution test. In your substitution test, if the verb can be replaced with one of these verbs, these are always linking verbs. Is, am, are, was, were, be, been, being. So if you see that and it's only by itself, there's no action component associated with it, it's all by itself, then you know that that's just linking two things together, okay? But sometimes there are some other words down here. Appear, become, became, feel, grow, look, remain, seem, smell, sound, stay, taste, and turn. Sometimes there are some other words like this that could either be functioning as an active verb or a linking verb. So the test that we do to see if it's active or linking is we replace it with one of these words up here. If it can be replaced and the sentence still makes sense, then you know it's a linking verb. Okay, so I have some examples here, and this is take 2 of my video, so I'm going to erase some of the things that I wrote on. Here is my sentence. The cook tasted the cake, and my second one is the cake tasted good. Well, I underlined these words right here, tasted and tasted, as my verb, as my action in the sentence. Okay, it's something that's being done. Now, I'm not sure whether these are active verbs or whether these are linking verbs, so I'm going to be replacing them with a to be verb. Again, to be verbs are up here, okay? And I'm going to use the word is. I could write this: the cook is the cake. Now, I guess that sentence could make sense, but it changes the meaning. It does not work here. The cook is not the cake, okay? So this is not a linking verb. That has to be functioning as an action verb. It can't be replaced. Down here, however, the cake, I'm going to do the same thing, is good. The cake is good. That makes sense, and it doesn't really change the meaning of the sentence. They're wanting to link this idea of the cake with this idea of good, right? And show that the cake is good. The cake tasted good. So this works. In this sentence, we could say tasted is a linking verb. It's not active. But in this sentence, tasted is an active verb. Okay? So that's a little bit of a review on verbs and different kinds of verbs. Let's look now at down below where we're trying to find the verb phrases. Now, anytime you hear the word phrase, you know that they're meaning several words that are functioning as one thing together, okay? So in a verb phrase, we have the main verb plus any helping verbs, any helping words that go along with it. Verb phrases can be one word, they can be 2, 3, up to 4 words in your verb phrase, okay? The main verb is going to be the main action. Helping verbs can be several different words, but on your sheet right here, it gives you a list of the most common helping verbs, and these are called auxiliary verbs. That's just a fancy word for it. Okay, so you can read through the list. This isn't all inclusive, but it has the common ones that you're going to see most of the time. Okay, now the reason why they add these helpers is to just change the verb form. Maybe it's being turned into a progressive verb or a perfect verb. There's all kinds of different words for it. But when you add a bunch of these in front of the verb, that's called the verb phrase, and that's what I want you to know. Okay, so we're going to look at a few different kinds of verb phrases, what they can look like here. So I have a verb phrase. This isn't a complete sentence. It's just the verb phrase that I pulled out for you. Will have been singing. Now you could say like, Gavin will have been singing a song, or, add something else along there. Will have been singing. My main verb here is singing. Will is a helper. And that's on this section right here. You can find it. Will. Okay? Have is a helper. That's again on the note sheet. Been is a helper. So we have 1, 2, 3 helping verbs and then the main verb. Okay? Sometimes what you'll find is that the verb phrase is interrupted by an adverb. It just kind of comes right in the middle, usually right before that main verb. So, will have been beautifully singing. This adverb is not part of my verb phrase here. Another thing that you might see is that you might have a compound verb in the verb phrase. A conjunction is added in between those main verbs to show that it's a compound verb phrase. Will have been singing and dancing. Okay, so that's all part of the verb phrase. Lastly, if you have a sentence that is a question, like this one, will you sing? Then the order changes around a bit. If this were a declarative sentence, one that's stating something, it would say, you will sing, right? But when we switch it around and make it a question, an interrogative sentence, then we might have some words coming in between the helping verb and the main verb in here. So will sing is my verb phrase. You is actually my subject, okay? Because I could switch it out here and change it to you will sing. So that's a lot of information right now. Feel free, like I said, to rewatch this as much as you need, to follow along with your notes. The next video is some group practice. So this was all the information, but in our next video, we're going to be applying it in some different sentences, and hopefully it will start to make a little bit more sense at that point in time, okay? Reach out to me with anything you need.